After 20 years of marriage, my wife, mother of our 2 daughters and the light of my life, completely blindsided me by announcing she was planning to go on a date with a coworker the next evening. Alice and I had tied the knot when we were still teenagers, and not long after, she got pregnant with our first girl. We were young, but we were deeply in love. We exchanged vows soon after, and 7 months later, we welcomed our daughter, Emma, into the world. Our marriage had always been something special, filled with love, and we were lucky to have 2 amazing children who looked up to both of us. My landscaping business flourished over the years, growing into a multi-million-dollar success that gave us a life we could have only dreamed about. So when Alice dropped this bombshell, telling me about her unhappiness and sadness since the kids left for college, it hit me like a freight train. I had always thought our marriage was perfect, so hearing this tore me apart. Alice went on to explain her close connection with Derek, the guy from accounting, who had been her shoulder to lean on during tough times, something I had no clue about. What shocked me the most was that she'd never mentioned being depressed or upset. The idea of her turning to another man for emotional support was bad enough, but knowing she wanted to get involved with him emotionally cut me even deeper. Derek, by the way, was married with 3 daughters of his own and tried to come across as some kind of mentor. But the truth? He was nothing more than a predator, preying on vulnerable married women looking for something casual with no strings attached. Mike, I can't hide this from you any longer, and I hope you can understand. But I need to do this for myself. I know it sounds selfish, but just let me have one night to see how it goes, Alice said. I was furious and wanted to scream, but I knew my wife well enough to know she'd already made up her mind. There was no talking her out of it. When she was done speaking, I just sat there, staring at her, while she nervously perched on the love seat across from me. The silence between us was suffocating. Instead of speaking, I just drained my glass of scotch, got up, and headed toward the door. Mike, don't ignore me. Stop acting like a child. This is happening, and I had to tell you before anything went further. I would never cheat on you. I want you to know everything. We've always been honest with each other, and I'll never deceive you, darling, she pleaded. I stood by the door, staring at her, probably still in shock. She curled up on the couch, hugging her knees to her chest, not saying another word. I walked upstairs, packed a bag with clothes and toiletries for a couple of days, and without a word, headed back down. As I moved toward the garage, she followed me, crying uncontrollably. Please, Mike, don't go. Everything will be fine. It's just one date. It'll be over soon. One night, can't you give me that after all these years? I shook my head, stunned by her words, and drove off. That Thursday evening, I checked into the Ritz-Carlton. Yeah, it cost $100 a night, and I didn't care. If I was going to deal with this, I'd at least do it in comfort. The calls and texts came in fast, but after one final message, I blocked her number. All I told her was that I wouldn't speak to her until Saturday, after her so-called date. I'm sure those words stung. The next day at work, I instructed my assistant to block any calls from Alice and let security know to keep her out of the building. I had a plan, and nothing was going to derail it. I'm Mike Donovan, a man of action in my professional life. Among my friends, I'm known as the guy who takes charge, the one who gets things done. People count on me to lead because I always come through. But at home, I'd taken on a more passive role, trying to be the easygoing husband and leave my work persona at the office. For 20 years, that approach had worked just fine, but now I realize I completely underestimated its true value. Looking back, I should have been more assertive and composed when it came to family matters. But my deep love for my wife made me treat her like royalty. I remember once laughing at a saying, but it doesn't feel funny anymore, treat her like a queen, and she'll treat you like a servant. It's a hard truth I'm now living, but I refuse to let it define my life. That Friday morning, I reached out to my brother, a detective down in Miami, asking for help. After explaining my situation, he referred me to one of his contacts, a private investigator named Paul Riggs. "Paul, it's Detective Harris. How's it going, buddy? Listen, I've got my brother on the line, and he needs your help tonight. I'm calling in a favor. Can you set someone up to tail his wife this evening? We need to know who she's meeting and get as much info as possible about the guy before tomorrow morning. Check his plates, get his home address, phone number, and shoot them over to me by tonight. Also, we'll need some photos of the two together. You know the routine. The pictures can wait till tomorrow, but tonight, we just need to know who this guy is." "Yeah, Harris, I got you. I'll make it happen. You'll get the guy's address and phone number tonight. The rest, including the photos, will come in tomorrow. What's the situation?" "That'll do for now. I'll send you my wife's address, the time she's leaving, and the guy's first name. I hear he works with her at Brokers Unlimited, and his name's Derek. Shouldn't be too hard to track down. She'll be home by 5 p.m., but we don't know exactly when she'll leave for the date, so you'll need someone on standby earlier than that. Just follow her when she heads out. Send me her address, and I'll take care of the rest," Paul replied. I listened intently, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction as my brother hung up. My plan was falling into place, and I couldn't wait to catch Alice in the act. I was ready to confront her and her not-so-secret lover. Part of me also wanted to visit Derek's wife and let her know what was going on with her husband. My next call was to my old buddy Carl. I asked him for the number of the escort service he'd used before. Carl had gone through a nasty divorce, and ever since, he'd stuck to hiring escorts instead of dealing with relationships. At the time, I thought he was crazy, but now, it all made sense. No lies, no cheating, just companionship. And probably cheaper than a divorce. The call went smoothly, and soon enough, I had arranged an overnight meeting with a beautiful young blonde. I even threw in an extra grand for her, given the unique situation. I requested the full girlfriend experience, telling her I was dealing with a breakup. This premium service is all about being treated like a real girlfriend from the start, attention, affection, and all. I explained that if my wife showed up, she'd need to play it cool and act like we just met, not like someone I'd hired. I anticipated Alice's reaction if she ever walked in on me with another woman, knowing that her desire to explore something new wouldn't go unreciprocated. I was ready to match her move with some extra flair of my own. We agreed to meet at the hotel bar for a drink and a conversation before continuing our evening. Alice usually held open houses every Saturday and would return home after 6 p.m., so this Saturday would be no different. Looking back on that Thursday night when Alice asserted her newfound independence, she sat fuming on the couch after I left, yelling her frustrations to an empty room. "I can't believe he's acting so childish," she muttered angrily. My quiet departure had infuriated her. As the night wore on, Alice grew more upset, trying over and over to reach me by phone and text. But when I didn't respond except to one particular message, the thought of betrayal crossed her mind, causing her to cringe and second-guess her plans. Still, she brushed those thoughts aside, telling herself this date was just harmless fun, not cheating. It's only one night of excitement. He'll get over it and things will go back to normal, she reassured herself, confident I was blowing it out of proportion. She planned to make amends the next night, fully expecting I'd forgive her like I always did. She was sure I wouldn't resist her charms, and she knew exactly how to smooth things over. When Alice got home Friday night to an empty house, she found herself reflecting on everything once more. Should she go through with the date with Derek, or cancel and ask me to come back? The idea of a thrilling evening kept her determined, though, and she began preparing. Standing in front of the mirror, she transformed her appearance from the familiar into something more seductive, smiling at her reflection. Her long hair was styled to perfection. She carefully removed the tags from a short, sultry dress and draped it over the mirror. Next, she slipped into stockings, ones she'd never worn for me, attaching them to a new garter belt she had bought earlier that day at Nordstrom. She ran her fingers over the lace, remembering how I used to ask her to dress provocatively, only to be brushed off. The memory of that Valentine's Day hit her like a wave, how I had brought home a beautiful set of lingerie from Victoria's Secret, only for her to reject it, asking if I thought she was some kind of slut for even suggesting it. For more than a minute, she stood frozen, grappling with the irony of now having her own set of stockings and garters, not for me, but for another man. It made her pause, and for the first time, she thought about calling off the date. My words about betrayal replayed in her mind, but as she slid into that silky dress, her guilt faded. She zipped it up, choosing to go without a bra, and was thrilled with the result. Staring at herself in the full-length mirror, she admired her long legs wrapped in black nylon, her high heels, and the way her breasts moved beneath the thin fabric, her nipples clearly visible. "Wow, I look like a bombshell," she whispered with a smirk. "I can't wait to see how Derek reacts when he sees me. But I need to remind myself, no sex tonight, just dinner and dancing." She tried to convince herself that it was just a date, nothing more. But deep down, she knew there was more to it. For the past month, her mind had been consumed with the thought of going out with Derek, and now it was finally happening. Despite my so-called immature behavior, she was intent on enjoying her night. Alice believed I'd understand and eventually let her have her fun, like I usually did. Just as she was making these final touches, my name flashed on her phone. It was my last-ditch effort to stop the disaster waiting to unfold, a final chance to salvage what was left of our marriage. I swallowed my pride, realizing how much I still cared for her, and called with the intention of reconciliation, ready to beg her to reconsider and not go through with the date. When Alice saw my name on the screen, she felt a sudden rush of nerves and regret, despite the allure staring back at her from the mirror. She wrestled with uneasy thoughts, knowing it was crucial to hear from me so I could try to understand and accept her decision. "David, I'm so glad you called. I miss you so much, and my love for you is as strong as ever. When will you come home, sweetheart?" she asked. "Hi, Alice. I love you too, and that's exactly why I had to call. I can't stand being apart from you, and your decision has shattered me. I'm begging you, don't go on this date. Please, just stay home, and I'll come back. I'll do whatever it takes to make you happy, to be the husband you need. If I've done anything wrong, I'm ready to make it right. I just want to be with you. Please cancel the date, for the sake of our marriage." Alice could hear the pain in my voice, and it softened her for a moment. My voice, usually so composed, was trembling and weak. I was practically in tears, pleading for her to reconsider, which seemed to give her a sense of control. She knew how much I loved her and was certain I'd forgive her once I understood her perspective. Our shared history, our kids, and my love for her were too strong to break, or so she thought. "Oh, David, my love for you is endless, and I hope we'll spend forever together. But I have to go through with this tonight. It has nothing to do with us, it's just something silly I need to do for myself. Please try to understand and let me have this one time, and I promise I'll be yours forever after. I'm so sorry for the pain I've caused you, but you're making this out to be more than it is. It's just dinner and drinks with a friend, nothing more. I'll be home tonight, and I'm committed to you. I hope you'll understand once it's all over. Tomorrow, we can talk, and you'll have me back as your wife. I love you, David, but I need to go now." She said this through tears, torn between ending the call and hearing my voice again. She hung up, wiped her eyes, and looked at her reflection, carefully avoiding smudging her makeup. "I'm sure he thinks I'm being unreasonable, but David, I'm sorry. I have to do this for myself. Please don't be angry," she whispered to the mirror. She fixed her hair, touched up her makeup, spritzed on some perfume, and tried not to think about me sitting alone in my hotel room. I stared at my phone after the call ended, wiping away tears as rage welled up inside me. Despite my heartfelt pleas, Alice had just confirmed she was going through with the date and expected me to be fine with it. "Tomorrow," she said. Despair washed over me as I realized I had lost her, the only woman I had loved for the past 20 years. Paul, the private investigator, parked his van across the street from our house a little before 5 p.m. When Alice pulled into the garage an hour later, Paul noticed a car pulling into the driveway shortly after and jotted down the license plate number. He made a few calls, and within 10 minutes, both my brother and I had the info we needed. We had the guy's home address and phone number before they even left for their date. When Derek walked into the house, he immediately saw the sadness in Alice's eyes. He recognized the signs, he'd seen it all before. For Alice, the realization hit her like a tidal wave. The weight of what she was doing outside her marriage was crashing down on her, forcing her to rethink her choices. "Alice, what's going on? You seem upset," Derek asked, noticing her sudden change in mood. "Derek, maybe we should call this off. I've been thinking about how much David doesn't want me to go out with you. I feel guilty. I feel like I've already betrayed him," she confessed, a single tear rolling down her cheek. Derek moved over to the couch, ready to console her with the same practiced charm he'd used on countless other women in similar situations. He saw this as his moment to ease her fears and take control of the situation, something he'd grown quite skilled at when navigating the complexities of a woman's emotions. Tommy used his charm and smooth talk to manipulate situations in his favor, seeing Helen's hesitation as just another hurdle to overcome rather than a boundary to respect. "It's all right, Alice. We don't have to go through with this, I completely understand," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "You've always been uneasy about going out alone, even for something as simple as dinner or a movie. He probably doesn't get that we're just friends. Guys like him want to keep their women protected from what they see as threats. But if he knew how much I valued our friendship, I doubt he'd have a problem with it." Tommy expressed his disappointment gently, making sure to show understanding at the same time. "I'll admit, I was really looking forward to spending the evening with you and trying out that new restaurant, but I get it." Then, sensing the moment, he offered an alternative. "Hey, here's an idea, why don't we just enjoy a nice dinner, and I'll take you home afterward. He probably wouldn't mind if you went out for a meal with a friend." His casual suggestion and the promise of something as simple as dinner worked their magic on Alice. Tommy's manipulative approach calmed her nerves, especially since she was already dressed and eager for some companionship and excitement. He convinced her that a meal together was harmless. By 7 p.m., despite her earlier misgivings and thoughts about me, Peter, the investigator, saw the two of them leaving the house and heading to a downtown restaurant. He kept my brother and me informed the whole night. Peter captured photos effortlessly over the next 4 hours, getting shots of them having dinner, holding hands, entering a dance club, dancing close, kissing, and generally behaving like a couple in love. He also recorded them slow dancing, with Tommy's hand on her backside, fondling her, and kissing her right there on the dance floor. By the time the sun came up, Peter had sent all the visuals my way. The next morning, right at 8 a.m., I made the call to Alice's dad, Brian. He'd been my friend for years, and we were golfing buddies, but I had to break the news. "Hey, Brian, it's David." "David. Good to hear from you. We still on for golf this Sunday?" "I'm not sure, Brian. I've got some troubling news. Your daughter, she's on a date with a coworker, even though I thought things were good between us. She told me she wanted something more, and now she's out with him. I love you and Maggie, but I can't take this anymore. As far as I'm concerned, our marriage is over. She's broken our vows, and I can't forgive her for that. I just wanted you to know what's going on before things get worse." "David, are you sure? That doesn't sound like Alice. You've got to be mistaken." "Brian, I've got a private investigator watching them right now. They're together as we speak. She's betrayed me, our marriage, and even our kids. I'm really sorry to have to tell you this, but I respect you, and I think you deserve to know the truth." "David, I'm so sorry. Please, don't do anything rash. I know she loves you, and maybe the two of you can still work this out. Brian, my mind's made up. I'll call you soon. Let's reschedule for next Sunday. This weekend's looking rough. Armed with Tommy's address from the investigator, I drove about 20 minutes to his house to meet his wife, Sarah. When I knocked and asked if she was Mrs. Brooks, she looked confused. A woman in her early 30s, she answered the door wearing tight pants and a lace blouse that accentuated her generous figure. Despite the revealing outfit Stella wore, I kept my gaze focused on her eyes, trying to avoid any embarrassment. Are you Mrs. Brooks? Tommy's wife? I asked. Yes. Is everything okay? She replied, a little confused. Oh, he's got great hands. Trust me, I know. He works with my wife, I said, trying to keep it light. Mind if I come in for a moment? We sat in the living room, and I wasted no time getting to the point. Mrs. Brooks, I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but your dear husband, Tommy, and my soon-to-be ex-wife are out on a date right now. Yes, my beautiful wife recently decided she needed to spread her wings, and your charming husband has been so generous that she felt the need to repay him. Are you sure you have the right man? My Tommy is supposed to be at his Friday night card game, she said, looking unsure. Mrs. Brooks, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't certain. I've got a private investigator tailing them as we speak. I'll have pictures and videos for you, but I wanted to break the news to you myself. I left her in tears when I walked out, knowing that their little affair has probably destroyed both of our marriages. But it's the game Tommy decided to play. The next morning, after breakfast, I sat back on the hotel bed with a cup of their specialty coffee. For a brief moment, I smiled, enjoying the smell of it all. But that comfort quickly turned to anger when I opened the investigator's photos on my phone. The only small relief was that she had come home at 1 a.m., there hadn't been any sexual encounters. Still, my blood boiled as I looked at the images of my wife with another man. Tears filled my eyes as I watched the video of them kissing, with his hand on her backside. Every hope of reconciliation was crushed. I couldn't shake the memory of her wearing those stockings for him, stockings I had bought her months ago and she had refused to wear for me. Her betrayal and the utter disregard for me were too much to bear. The sorrow I had initially felt turned into a burning rage. Tommy had convinced her to extend their night, taking her to a dance club after dinner. That decision was the final nail in the coffin of our marriage, and deep down, I knew she realized it was wrong even before agreeing. But she did it anyway, hoping it would just be a one-time thing. With tears streaming down my face, I felt a pain deeper than anything I had ever known. I'd cried when my mother passed and when I'd lost close friends, but this? This was a different kind of agony. I must have watched that video 3 times, freezing at the part where Tommy's hand was all over her. I yelled out in frustration, promising myself that I'd get revenge. In the end, it didn't matter that they hadn't slept together. Her actions were enough, disrespectful, hurtful, and a complete betrayal. By Saturday afternoon, around 2 p.m., I met Candy at the hotel. We spent a couple of hours getting to know each other, and I made my intentions clear. Candy turned out to be the perfect accomplice for what I had planned. By 4 p.m., we were back at my house, and an hour later, we were in bed together. Before that, though, I left a letter for Alice on the front door. It read, Alice, last night you shattered our marriage vows and broke my heart. When you decided to step outside of our marriage, I stopped seeing us as a married couple. Legally, we might still be bound, but the bond between us is gone. I plan to stay in the master bedroom because this is my home. You can use any other room, but my bed is off limits. I've moved your belongings into the guest rooms. Please respect my space. You've gotten the independence you wanted, and now I have mine. I hope you're happy with your choice. Love, your ex-husband, David. I took off my wedding band and placed it on top of the letter, pinning it to the door with one of my collector's knives, driving the blade right through the ring and into the wood. This would be the first thing Alice saw when she returned home that night. It was exactly 10 p.m. when she pulled into the driveway and spotted the knife lodged deep in the front door. Naturally, it startled her. Anyone would be shaken by a sight like that. She cautiously approached the door, her eyes scanning for anything else out of place. That's when she noticed the note pinned beneath David's wedding band. Her heart began to race, and as she reached for the note, tears began to stream down her face. She held the ring in her palm, reading his message, and her stomach dropped. Without a second thought, she bolted inside the house, desperate to find David and beg him not to leave her. Standing in the dark hallway, sobbing, she called out his name. The house was eerily silent, except for some faint noises coming from upstairs. She climbed the stairs, following the sound, and when she reached the bedroom, she froze. The noise wasn't just any noise, it was the unmistakable sound of lovemaking. Alice's heart pounded in her chest as she opened the door in a fit of rage, only to see a young woman riding her husband in their bed. She stood there, stunned, watching the scene unfold before her eyes. This young girl was on top of David, in the very bed they had shared for years. Alice's fury boiled over, and she screamed, "How could you?" Her voice cracked as she turned and fled the house, jumping into her car and speeding away. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she drove aimlessly, eventually finding refuge at her sister Sarah's house. After some time, once the tears subsided and she managed to calm down, the painful reality of her husband's betrayal began to sink in. She didn't know what to do next. Sarah, trying to be supportive, was just as shocked. "This doesn't sound like David. I can't believe he would cheat on you. He's always treated you so well. Honestly, I've even envied how much love he's shown you. This is totally out of character. Is there something that happened recently that might explain this?" she asked. In a quiet, defeated voice, Alice finally admitted, "I don't know, maybe it's because I went out with a coworker last night. That's the only thing that makes sense." Sarah's eyes widened. "Wait, you went out with a coworker? Who?" "Just a coworker. It was just dinner and some dancing. That's all," Alice explained, trying to downplay it. Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. "So, you went out with another man, left David at home, and thought it was just no big deal?" Alice nodded, "Yes, but it sounds so much worse when you say it like that." Sarah was visibly angry. "Of course it sounds worse, because it is worse, Alice. What were you thinking?" Alice sobbed harder, finally realizing that David's actions weren't out of nowhere, he had retaliated, hurt by what she had done. She showed Sarah the note she had found pinned to the door. Sarah read it, and her face turned somber. She gently told Alice, "You made a big mistake, and it could have ruined your marriage. You acted without thinking, and now you're facing the consequences." Sarah offered her a place to stay for the night, but encouraged her to talk things over with David the next day. While she hoped it wasn't too late, she warned Alice to prepare for the worst. "If my husband had found out about something like this, I'm not sure he'd react any differently. And honestly, David has always been more devoted than most. Just be ready for whatever happens." Alice spent the night in Sarah's guest room, crying until the early morning hours, barely getting any sleep. Sarah sent David a text, asking him to call back when he had a moment. David knew what the message was about and returned the call soon after. "Hey, Sarah. What's going on?" he answered. "Hey, David. My foolish sister is here, and she told me everything, about what she did and what happened at your house last night. I don't blame you for what you did, and I have to admit, your response was quick." Sarah chuckled softly. David replied, "Yeah, you know me, Sarah. I don't tolerate nonsense. I get it, David. She made a huge mistake, but she's a wreck right now, and I don't know how long I can keep her here like this. You two should talk tomorrow. I'm not sure if you're really kicking her out for good, and I wouldn't blame you if you were, but if she hasn't gone too far with this guy, there might still be a chance to fix things. Maybe counseling could help, or perhaps we should explore shock therapy for her defective brain, you know. Mary joked, but then got serious. Anyway, just let her come back and talk tomorrow, she urged. Of course, Mary. She's still welcome here, this is her home, and I haven't thrown her out. But things aren't going to be the same while she's here. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm deeply hurt by her betrayal. I'll hear her out, but I can't promise anything for the future. Right now, I'm torn between love and hate. The pain is overwhelming, and I don't see myself taking her back unless something miraculous happens. You know, you've always been the reasonable one in the family, I said. I can't believe my sister thought you'd be okay with her seeing another guy. What was she thinking? Mary said, shaking her head. Just try to be patient, and remember, she loves you. Hopefully, she didn't go too far with that guy. Thanks, Mary. I'll send her home whenever she's ready, I replied. Thanks, John. You're the best. You know it, and I know it, Mary said with a chuckle. Goodbye, Mary. Talk soon. On Sunday at noon, I came back from the gym to find Alice's car parked in the driveway. She was sitting at the kitchen table, looking nervous. When she saw me, she tried to smile. You know, we're not getting divorced. We can work this out because we still love each other, she said. I didn't say a word. I just made myself a cup of coffee and sat down across from her, watching as she nervously fiddled with her hands in her lap. After a few sips, I finally broke the silence. Alice, it doesn't matter to me whether we get divorced or not. The truth is, the moment you broke our vows, our marriage was over. I don't see us as a couple anymore, and just like me, you're free to be with whoever you want. The only difference now is that you won't be sharing my bed, and there's no more physical relationship between us. That ended the night you went out with the man you claim isn't your boyfriend. He's not my boyfriend. And nothing happened, she insisted. Alice, you went on a date with another man, dressed seductively, had dinner, and spent hours with him. Whether you realize it or not, those actions were the final straw for me. Our marriage ended that night, so you got what you wanted. If you don't want a divorce, fine. But we're done. I don't want a divorce, John. Just give it time, and I'll come back to your bed. What about that woman you were with? Are you done with her? She asked sharply. I couldn't help but laugh. You ruined our marriage the second you agreed to go out with him, got into his car, and left me behind. No, I'm not done with Candy. She's young, attractive, exciting, and honestly, she's a fantastic lover. It was the best experience I've ever had. We explored things you and I never did, and I finally realized what I've been missing. There's no reason for me to stop seeing her. I watched her face crumble as I continued. And in case you didn't know, while you were out with your so-called friend, I paid a visit to his wife, Stella. Did you know they have 3 kids? Probably not. You were too caught up in your fling to consider the damage you were causing. Stella told me all about your Tommy. Turns out, you're the 3rd woman she's caught him with this year. The last woman was Jessica Wilson. Does that name ring a bell? She works with you. Their affair ended in divorce. So, congratulations. You've not only wrecked our marriage, but you've also helped destroy 2 other families and affect the lives of 5 children. Alice sat there, stunned, the weight of my words finally sinking in. It was clear she was starting to see Tommy in a different light, realizing the man she had compromised her marriage for wasn't what she thought. Helen seethed with anger at her own ignorance, horrified to realize that Tommy had caused the downfall of other families, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. She lashed out at me, her voice sharp. He's not my boyfriend, and you need to stop saying that. I can't believe you went to his wife's house to accuse him of cheating. It was just dinner, for God's sake. You're being cruel and hurtful, and what about you? Bringing another woman into our house, that's inexcusable. You need to stop this. Oh, just dinner. Did you forget about the dirty dancing, the kissing, and groping at the nightclub? I promised Stella all the pictures and videos so she can use them when Tommy tries to brush it off. Just like you're doing now. You may not think it's cheating, but everyone else does. When will you see that? I shot back. You think I'm the cruel one here? Tell me, how do you justify your actions, Helen? I'm not giving up Candy, and if you can't handle that, then you don't have to stay. No, John, I want you to stop seeing her and be with me. I swear I won't see anyone else, I'll be faithful. Please, she begged. Promises? I laughed bitterly. Like the one you made to be my wife and forsake all others. Where did that vow go? If you're uncomfortable with this, you have two choices, leave or file for divorce. Maybe you and Tommy can shack up together since you'll need a new place to live. You two deserve each other. Or you can stay here, maybe go live with your sister Mary. I'm sure she'd welcome you with open arms. You'd make a great example for her kids, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. John, will you just stop it? Don't you love me? Don't you want us to work things out? She asked, her voice trembling. Helen, it's far too late for that. You shattered me when you told me you wanted to be with someone else. Do I still love you? Maybe, but the trust is gone, and without trust, I don't know if I can ever fully love you again. A real man wouldn't let his wife go out with another man, but that's exactly what you did. You made it clear that you wanted something outside our marriage, and now you have to live with the consequences. And right now, all I want is to be with Candy. She brings me pleasure you can't imagine, and I think it's killing you to see me happy with someone else, isn't it? Well, now you know a little of the pain I've felt, and you'll have to deal with it. Revenge is bitter, but that's how life goes. I paused, letting my words sink in before continuing. The decision to divorce is in your hands. We can keep living together like roommates and see where things go, or I can have the divorce papers ready by the end of the week. It's entirely up to you, I said, my tone firm and resolute. She looked at me, realizing how serious I was. For once, she didn't argue. Over the next month, I continued bringing Candy home every weekend. We spent hours in bed, making love several times a day. Her skin was soft, and every moment with her made me feel alive again, slowly healing the wounds Helen's betrayal had left behind. Helen hated the weekends, begging me to end things with Candy, but I wasn't ready to stop. I relished every moment of it. Each Saturday night, when Candy and I arrived, Helen would leave the house and only return once Candy was gone. We even made an agreement, I'd text Helen when Candy left so she could come back. I have to admit, the sex was incredible, and seeing Helen's pain brought me a strange kind of satisfaction. It was almost too good to give up. But by the following week, guilt started creeping back into my mind. I began to realize that what I had with Candy, while thrilling, was only physical. As much as I enjoyed it, there was no deeper connection, no real intimacy. And, on top of that, it was getting expensive. When Alice came back on Sunday night, I told her that I'd stop seeing Candy for now, but I still intended to look for another woman if things didn't change. Alice pleaded with me to stop, asking for another chance and promising she'd make it right. David, you've already punished me enough. Every week, I've had to watch that woman walk into our home and be with the man I love. The pain is unbearable, and I can't take seeing you with someone else. Please give me one more chance. I know I can't compete with her, but I can give you love and things no one else can. Her words caught me off guard. Love? Do you even understand what love is, Alice? Love isn't abandoning your husband to go off and explore your desire to date someone else. No, I don't believe you really know what love means. You can't offer something you don't have. I paused before continuing. But here's what I'll do. I won't look for anyone else until we go through couples counseling. If we can find common ground, maybe we'll have a future. She leapt from the couch and wrapped her arms around me, kissing me all over my face before finally reaching my lips. "Oh, thank you, honey. I promise I'll make it up to you," she said, breathless. "Hold on," I interrupted. "I'm not forgiving you for what you've done. I'm just giving us one last shot before I end things for good because of your infidelity." "David, stop talking like that. You love me, and I know we'll always be together. Can I please stay with you tonight?" she asked, kissing me again. "Not yet. I still can't get the images of you with him out of my head. The thought of you kissing another man, letting him touch parts of you that are mine, it haunts me every single day. I'm furious at how thoughtlessly you hurt me and turned your back on our marriage. You should count yourself lucky that our kids don't know what happened. I can't even imagine what they'd think of their unfaithful mother. You can see I'm still angry about all of this." I sighed and added, "Let's take it slow. We'll see how things go with counseling. I've set up an appointment with Dr. Madison for Tuesday, and I'll be reliving the pain, the misery, and the betrayal twice a week for the next 3 months. It's the same old therapy you hear about in all the stories, it's just as agonizing. I'll have to keep rehashing the affair and listen to hours of therapist talk. Our life could have been so much easier if you had just stuck to your vows. But I guess that was asking too much." After 3 months of therapy, twice a week, we finally managed to address our issues. Alice admitted to the pain she had caused and said she understood my reaction. She still claimed that my revenge affair with Candy was worse, but I made it clear, when she went on that date, she broke our agreement and freed me. She eventually accepted that, but she was still hurt. The therapist was harsh in condemning my retaliation, but honestly, it didn't bother me. I'd do it all over again without hesitation. In the end, we reconnected through a postnuptial agreement. It spelled out that if she strayed again, she'd lose everything. She agreed to let me track her phone, monitor her emails and texts, and there would be full transparency, no secrets. I made it crystal clear, no form of cheating, emotional or physical, would be tolerated in this house, and if she ever did it again, she was out. She promised me, swore up and down, that she'd never let another man even flirt with her again and pledged her loyalty forever. Even as I listened to Helen's promises, Stella's words, "Once a cheater, always a cheater," echoed in my mind. A year later, things looked the same as they had before the affair, but I was more cautious now, watching Helen closely. I couldn't shake the feeling that it might happen again, especially with her sister Mary's help keeping her on the straight and narrow. We made sure Helen stayed true to her word. Meanwhile, Tommy wasn't so lucky. His divorce cost him dearly. After being kicked out, his ex-wife got the house, child support for their 3 kids, and spousal support. Now, Tommy lived in a cramped studio apartment, struggling to make ends meet because of his infidelity. It was ironic, he lost everything over a simple dinner, a dance, a little flirting, and a kiss. What a fool. Helen was mortified when she finally learned the full story of Tommy's history, including his involvement in Jennifer's divorce. Finding out about his affairs with multiple women hit her hard, and she realized just how close she'd come to tearing apart our family for good. Determined not to repeat her mistake, she threw herself into proving her love for me and our kids. She stayed faithful, just like she promised. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't forget the sight of that young woman with me, and she made up her mind that she'd never tolerate such a betrayal again. In her mind, I was hers, and she wasn't going to lose me to anyone else. Poor Tommy, though. Messing around with married women turned out to be a costly habit. And it's always dangerous when you pick the wrong husband. Luckily for him, I wasn't the type to seek revenge in that way. But if things had gone differently, who knows what might have happened. Funny how people who've been wronged never really forget, and sometimes they eventually find a way to get even. 2 years after his divorce from Jennifer, who worked with Helen, her new husband, one of Tommy's many unwilling victims, ran into Tommy in a parking lot. About an hour later, as Tommy was getting into his car, a bar patron found him unconscious on the ground with 2 broken arms, a cracked rib, and, well, let's just say his testicles didn't come out unscathed. Only time will tell if Tommy finally learned his lesson.